Thank you for tuning in to Open for Business, a program brought to you from the SCC studios out of White Bear Lake. Open for Business is a program that is produced by the Maplewood Business Consortium. This program is a business specifically designed for small business owners within our community. In a previous program of Open for Business, we had some film footage of a recent hearing held by the Small Business Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives. And they had representatives before them from the Small Business Administration, from the NIH, and from several other organizations, talking about the importance of Congress's reauthorizing a bill to provide grant money for small business owners that can be accessed from the different agencies of the federal government. I'm going to start off with the opening remarks of the committee's chairperson, which will give you a general overview of this reauthorization. So let's take a look.
The reauthorization of the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Programs, or SBIR and STTR. Innovation is the energy that drives our economy. Technological breakthroughs and the entrepreneurship it spurs build our economy by finding state-of-the-art solutions to difficult problems and marketing those new products. This correlation is particularly important in the small business arena. Small businesses tend to be more nimble, responding to market changes more rapidly than their bigger counterparts, and they drive the innovation sector and make us more agile in the global economy. It is that recognition of small firms' ingenuity that led Congress to establish the SBIR program back in 1982 and the STTR program in 1992. These programs set aside a portion of federal research dollars for small businesses. Spanning 11 participating agencies such as the Department of Defense, National Institutes of Health, and the National Science Foundation, the development dollars set aside for small businesses are critical for both the small business companies that use the grants and the federal agencies that seek innovation to the problems that they encounter.
These grants are actually monies that are within the department budgets of these 11 different agencies at the federal level. And the authorization for this came from Congress, and Congress has an expectation that these 11 agencies will set aside a certain level of funding that can specifically be applied for grants by the small business community. And a lot of that money goes towards research, but much of this money can also be used in other phased approaches that a business might be at, depending upon what their product is and what the mission is of that particular agency. So for instance, a small business owner may have an idea, a product that they're in the developmental stage for. And if they find a good match between them and an agency that is funding that type of product or research, they can apply. And then, of course, there's certain benchmarking that needs to be satisfied throughout the life of the grant. And then let's say once that product now is ready to go to market, well, then there might be additional funding then available to help that small business owner take that now completed research and that completed product and now bring it to market to make it a commercial endeavor. So there's several, as I mentioned, several different phases of which a small business owner might find themselves at. They may be at that inception and development stage. They might be at that stage where they have a finished product. It is, the research is done, but now they need to bring it to the commercial market. This funding that we're talking about does have accountability measures, and that is one of the duties of Congress is the duty of oversight. So with any program, Congress is supposed to be providing that oversight of the agencies to ensure that the money is being used wisely, that it has certain protections on it. So for instance, if there is supposed to be collateralization of the funding, that collateralization is actually in effect and is being properly monitored. Also, to ensure that the agencies themselves are reaching out and letting the small business owners know that there is money available to them, because after all, that's part of the mission, is to try and have this extra funding go out to small businesses who in the end result hopefully will come to market with a new product, a new research initiative of some type, whether or not if it's biomedical or it's some other kind of a mechanical product of some kind, that it will then become a commercial success. Because if you're bringing products to the market that are commercial success, obviously that will help our economy, and especially since it is such a world economy, we need to be competitive with all the other countries throughout the world. So this is one way that the Congress has decided that it wants to help that whole initiative in economic development within our country. But again, you need to make sure that you're following protocols, that good benchmarking is done, and that Congress is providing the proper oversight of the agencies that are in charge of managing these programs of grant money for small businesses. And as you heard there, that was one of the latest issues in the last reauthorization, is to beef up the amount of accountability with the paperwork and to being able to measure those benchmarks. And he's asking, well, okay, with that in mind, well, how successful have we been? We certainly haven't been reducing paperwork, and as all small business owners out there know, the more paperwork that you have to complete, the less time you have for your business or for productivity in other parts of your business endeavor. So let's continue on.
Well, I'll start with the paperwork. I'll start with the paperwork side, which is a challenge, but most of that, I believe, falls outside of the chain of command of the SBIR program offices. It's more in the head of contracting and head of granting organizations. The way a proposal needs to be submitted and the things that need to come along with that are driven by FAR and DFAR and by those communities. So I think one of the challenges is, and understandably, you've been trying to put that emphasis on us, which we've tried to do, but there's only so much the SBIR program management community can do. And I think those other communities are tasked with kind of establishing how contracting is done, and that's where most of the paperwork happens. So that might be an approach to maybe ask how they can reduce some of those things. But I do think in trying to then make common proposals and things like that, so at least one form is working, maybe not across the board, but at least for 80%. So we can work on those things. As far as data collection, we've done a lot. So when the legislation happened, we had a pretty old system at SBA in data collection, and so we've modernized that system, and we've spent a lot of time and effort to develop that system, and then portals so that the data can get pushed by the agencies. The challenge has been we have about 150,000 records, and each record has over 70 fields, so it's a massive amount of data. When you add additional requirements, you have to tag those to the original records, and so it has been challenging, but we've made a lot of progress, and the agencies have been very successful and helpful in trying to, because they have to push it to us and we have to check it and all that. So we're making great progress, but there is more to be done.
So you might be thinking to yourself, well, okay, so there's all this data out there. What if you, as a small business owner, you're curious about this data and you want to take a look at the outcomes of a particular grant program that you might be interested in applying to, that you want to understand more about that particular program and how many grants that they have let out, and what was the success of those grants, and what was the amount of the grants, and who were the grants to. Well, guess what? All of that is public data. And through the Federal Freedom of Information Act, you can obtain that documentation and find out more about the particular grant program that you might be interested in applying to. Now, the SBA, the Small Business Administration, as you heard there, generally they operate as sort of the portal for all these various agencies, these 11 agencies, to be able to coordinate in one platform the availability of these funds. So if you're interested in finding out more about these types of research funds for small businesses, a good place to start is with the Small Business Administration. And then from there, they can help you to figure out exactly which agency might be the best fit for the type of product that you are developing, and and the type of funding that you need to focus on for the business that you're in. So let's continue on.
Let me go to you next. You mentioned that you encourage small businesses to submit their own proposals that fit your mission, as opposed to having them all respond to your solicitations. Could you talk about how that process works a little more?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In fact, we do both. We have what we call a parent solicitation, which accepts investigator-initiated applications. This is where small businesses can propose any technology that fits within our mission space, so any life science or biomedical, biobehavioral technology. And we don't presume to know where the best or the next best innovation will come, so we leave it to the community and entrepreneurs to tell us that. About 70% or so of our applications and awards are what we call investigator-initiated. The remainder are in response to specific funding calls where we put out more targeted topics via both grants and contracts, where we've identified a more specific need for one of our or more of our institutes to accomplish its mission.
So as you heard there, you might find yourself in one of two positions. One, you may have that brilliant idea that you are working on that is the foundation of your small business. And in this case, this gentleman was talking about specifically his agency is interested in biomedical research or products, and a large number of the proposals that they get for grants are actually that initiated by the individual who is developing that research, developing that product, and they are saying, here's my idea, will you fund it? On the other hand, they also have some grants that are initiated because they have come out as the agency and said, okay, we are putting a call out for small businesses that are engaged in the research of X, Y, and Z, or involved in the development of a product that does A, B, or C, and then small companies that are involved in those areas, they look at that and they go, oh, that seems like that applies to me. I should apply and let them know that I'm out here. So you see, it can be one of either of those ways. And again, it depends on the product or the research that you are engaged in, and it depends on what agency their mission matches up with what you're doing. And so you really, again, have to do a little research into that. But a good place to start is with the SBA, the Small Business Administration, because if they do not have the information on their website, they do have local offices and they can help point you in the right direction. So let's continue on with the film footage of the recent hearing of the Small Business Committee, U.S. House of Representatives.
Williams, you deal with these programs every day. Can you tell me how we can improve them? And my question is, I know you've talked about the data collection already. What about things like the tax benefits or treatment of the, is there a way to improve the way the small businesses, innovating folks can have a better tax advantage to be able to do some of this? And or perhaps maybe the size of the awards, is it too small, too large, and the speed with which the awards are given? Is it going too slow, too fast? Can you give me some ideas on some of those right quick?
No, because it's hard, but yeah, I'll do my best. So I think what we've been able to do the administrative dollars, which have really helped us address all those areas. But why I say no is that what we found is there's no one size fits all. NSF does things a certain way, but even within SF, a software project is different than a materials development project that's different than a health project. And so trying to have one way and expect a phase 1 to go to phase 2 to go to phase 3, we know doesn't work. And that's why you have to have flexibility. Some will need more money. I think, funding in increments. And so if something doesn't pan out, we cut it off and we put more money in other things, but you do need more money in certain projects. And then you have to be able to assess that with the expertise at the agency to say, wow, this has transitioned, a program of record is coming forward. So the answer is it takes more management. And what's unique about SBIR is the program makes all the money go to the small businesses and not the government entity to spend any in-house. So that's where the 3% helped a lot, and we're doing more with that.
Okay, quick question. What percentage of applicants are awarded money?
So for phase 1, it varies a little bit, but it's on average about 15% of the phase 1 proposals that come in are awarded, and then it's about 40 to 50% of those go from phase 1 to phase 2.
Okay.
And then about that go to phase 3.
Okay, the 85% that don't get awarded, what's the problem with their presentation? Is it something doesn't work? It's not going to have a viable business plan? Is it pie in the sky, or what? What's the problem?
Yeah, it would be all of those. So we look at 3 things. We look at the quality of the project. So certain ones that are grant, they're focused on a specific need. And if it doesn't hit that need, then they're not good, and they won't get evaluated.
Okay, is the need evaluated by you, or is the need evaluated
by the individual agencies and the technical experts within those agencies? Now, some of them that are grant organizations push it out to peer reviews. So they'll bring in the experts in the material sciences and things. Contracting shops will do it into house, like DOD uses their experts within house.
I think.
So this is great information to know, that if you are looking to apply for one of these grants, what is the probability of getting one? Or for those folks who don't get an award, why? Because if you understand why that 85% is not being awarded a grant, then you know how you can better improve your chances. And it's really either by doing some research into the topic, listening to hearings such as this so that you get a feel for what they look at when they review your proposal, and to maybe see what other resources you should try to tap into before you submit your final application to them. Because certainly a half-completed application that is not as complete and as detailed as what they expect will probably be unsuccessful. I mean, that just makes sense. But certainly forearmed is forewarned. So it's I think I was glad to hear that in this hearing that the congressman asked that question, because that's getting down to the real nitty-gritty of trying to understand from a small business owner's standpoint, what are the chances of being awarded a grant, and what is being looked at when you do apply for a grant? How can you improve your chances of being funded? Let's continue.
Having business teams review the applications for viability of that applicant, is that right?
Yes, sir.
I think you had some numbers, or I was going to ask you, I think Mr. Portnoy, I believe, had some numbers on successes for his people.
Yes, sir. Our phase 1s are around 15 to 20%, and phase 2s 35 to 40%, and that more or less holds from year to year. We do have a mandated two-tiered peer review process by NIH's Authorization Act, and so we use external peer review for phase one, where we use both business and academic experts and commercialization experts, and we strive to have around 25 to 50% of our review panels be from the business side. And our second level of review is our advisory council, which is more of an administrative review prior to award being made.
Now, of course, for the small business owner to hear the type of review that the proposals go through, that they have people who are learned in the field and in the area review them like a peer review, you know, that might feel a little daunting and thinking, oh my goodness, how will I ever survive it? However, if you've got a good product and you've got a good piece of research and you've done your homework, it shouldn't be something that you should be scared by, and that you should apply, because if you've done, as I said, your homework and you understand what you need to put in that application and how to best present it, you will increase your chances of success. Now, on the flip side of the coin, for those folks who are watching this who are not small business owners, but they're just watching because it's interesting and they're taxpayers, they're thinking to themselves, boy, I'm really glad that there is this level of accountability behind these grant programs, because you have that feeling of confidence that the money's not just being thrown out willy-nilly to good ideas just as well as bad ideas, that they are being vetted, that the research and development ideas that are coming through these programs and through these grants are being vetted. And after all, that's what we want. We want to increase our chances of success, given that we're spending taxpayer dollars on promoting these good programs. So let's continue.
Counselor, I mean, if you have business people on your review boards, I mean, they understand how the real world works, whether this is viable or not. To me, that would be very important on your second team as well, which didn't act like, or you indicated not much participation there.
So as he mentioned, they've got business people also on these teams, because it isn't just a matter of, you know, looking at the research, but there's also, when you get to the next phase, there's the issue of a marketing plan. There's the issue of how to bring this research, this project, to the commercial level to be successful at the commercial level. So you see the funding and the focus is a little different at each phase, because the product is moving along. Continue.
Mr. Williams, you also talked about, mentioned NASDAQ a minute ago, which makes me think, is there plenty of capital available for a lot of folks whenever they come out of the program to be able to take this product or service to the next step? Or have you seen a problem with funding at that next level for the outside funding?
Overall, we've seen a problem with that funding to the next level to get in, because that group is more risk adverse than they had been in the past. Also, they don't like to invest in DoD projects as much as they like to do life sciences. So it depends on some of that, and half the program is DoD. So you typically won't get a venture investor in a DoD type project.
So, got a couple seconds left. Mr. Smith, do you like to comment on that?
I have to concur with Mr. Williams. From a venture capitalist position, when most of our contracts are going to be cost plus award fee of 6%, that's not going to drive them to that.
So that begs the question, do you go back to companies that have worked with you before as a preferential awardee versus a new company that comes to you with a new idea?
And the gentleman's time's expired, but go ahead and answer the question.
No, sir, because the first gate will be, does it technically address my challenge?
Is the idea or the product going to fit with your program?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
And as you heard, once a product has been developed and it's working, and then it's time to bring it to that commercial level, to bring it out to the market, to market it, to start making sales, Okay, so now you've got that. Now you've got the next level after that, and that's a greater investment in the company so that it can grow, so the company can grow, its production can grow. And with many products, as you heard, depending upon what the emphasis is, they may not be attractive to those venture capitalists because they're not necessarily going to get as large a return on them as they're looking for, or as they may get in a different field of product development. And so that's why in this case it's important to have funding available also at this stage for these small businesses and the products they develop, because otherwise they wouldn't have the capital they need so they can grow and expand. Let's continue on.
And to Mr. Williams, it would appear that universities have an ability to reach a significant number of potential SBIR participants. Has SBA partnered at all with these institutions to reach underrepresented groups? And what incentives or resources could we provide these institutions to encourage outreach to underrepresented groups?
Well, we've done two things. So we kicked off last year what we call our SBIR road tours, and so we went to 22 states, and many of those were held on university campuses, probably at least half of them. We also have a program called FAST, and then it's got sister funding, which called FAST to SBTTCs, and both of those programs typically go to university-oriented SBTCs or organizations with there. Part of the motivation and the requirement on that is to reach underrepresented communities, and the three categories are an underrepresented state, a minority, or women companies and STEM-oriented people.
And I know that there are quite a few small business owners out there that probably fall into all of those categories, and that's why I wanted to be sure to include this clip, because there are special programs and outreach programs specifically designed to reach out to minority-owned businesses or women-owned businesses, and as you heard, even underrepresented states. So you may live in a state that is underrepresented in these programs. And so if that's the case, perhaps there is something available for you. So that's something to look at anyway. And as he mentioned, he's from the SBA, the Small Business Administration. So there again, that's through the SBA. As you'll hear in this next clip, one agency develops a good handbook. Another agency takes that, uses it as a template.
How about any feedback you can share with regard to your guidebook? How well that's been received, and has that been shared with some of the other services as well?
Yes, sir. Actually, one of the services, I think, changed the cover and claimed it as their own.
That's among the ways we got more excellence in our formations, is really by just cross-leveling and sharing best practices, so I appreciate that. And related, you know, you talked about what you saw as the utility of the 2011 reauthorization, and you talk about how that rather significantly, dramatically reduced the award times and the distribution thereof. Can you put a finer point on that, on how you use that 3% and
what
talk
we
us
used
through?
with that 3% is we funded a contract center, and I call it my focus contract center, where they have a team who essentially are experts in doing SBR contracts. Okay. So they do those every day. They've got their standardized templates and their formats. Instead of a 10-page cost proposal, they're able to do it with 2, those kind of things, and that's where we've seen reductions. And that's actually one of the follow-ons we're doing, is that team is now going to go out to my other contracting centers and provide training to them.
I hope that you've enjoyed this session of Open for Business, brought to you as a production from the Maplewood Business Consortium. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, goodbye.